sports fans, to another episode of the Boba Joe Show, which will not feature the Macho Man because we're talking about Sting, Cactus Jack, and some Rickies, double Rickies in this episode.
We're gonna talk about some bikini-related action as well.
I'll get an all year for that one. That was quite exciting and unexpected when I watched this actually last month on the network, which is unfortunately going away because the Netflix global deal is removing all the local content here. Things are disappearing. Not unlike I had a dream this week, and it was actually, I'm not making this up, actually, a dream this week about all the wrestling stuff's going away from the local network because it's moving to Netflix. The Langoliers, Dean Stockwell, Stephen King story, where they're like eating. Things are literally disappearing off the network day by day. I go to watch stuff and it's just gone, and like it doesn't exist anymore until it gets re-uploaded somewhere else. So I was quite annoyed. But anyhow, instead of being annoyed, I'll be quite happy to talk about WCW Beach Blast from 1992. I can't say Beach Blast without thinking of Blast Processing and the Sega Genesis and Sonic the Hedgehog. But I love this logo, man. This like WCW with the big fist wave thing. I think it's one of the coolest graphic logo things they ever came up with. They used it for 2 years, and then they retired it, and then it became Bash at the Beach and Baywatch and all that sort of stuff with like Macho Man and Hogan and all that.
They were just really into the beaches back in the day.
Yeah,
it was WCW.
Look at we've got Ricky and Ricky and the inside of Sandcastle. It's so tacky, but at the same time, I absolutely love this artwork. It's very much like a 90s comic book sort of artwork with a little bit of Marvel or DC or Boris and Julie, like the muscles. And we have got two guys that are like known for being like really, really good, like good physiques, but they're not super heavyweights. They're kind of like, like medium weights who can move and duck and dive. First match, which I have not seen and could find no record of other than the text description, dark match. We had a tag team, DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, Rittenborn, and Tracy Smothers versus Big Josh, the Junkyard Dog, and the Z-Man. Junkyard Dog figured turn up mail this week. Pretty happy with them. So yeah, there's no couldn't even find an actual image like a JPEG or nothing. Could find nothing other than text description saying there was a dark match of this. So I just grabbed two generic images and chucked them in there. So we get on to our first actual
old names together. It's just such a weird list of names.
I mean, there's 80s JYD, and that's modern DDP, where he's an old man, pretty much, because it was the best of which I could find.
Big Josh, the Junkyard Dog, and the Z-Man. That has to go down as the most random team and random ever. Just,
But yeah, that was a dark match. I could find no video record of it, and I couldn't even find. Usually for these dark matches, when we do, WrestleMania or whatever, I can find an out of focus, fuzzy JPEG that at least references it existed. For this, nothing, vaporware. So on to the beginning of our event, which was the 20th of the 6th in 1992. Location, which I stole from a wiki page, because I always forget where the hell these things are. And being I don't live in America, they got so many bloody coliseums and nonsense-atoriums and baseball, basketball, football, wrestling, so many venues. In Australia, we've got like a handful, and you kind of know where they are, like Subiaco and Melbourne and Sydney. In America, they've got a million of these things, and to me, they're all interchangeable, unless it's like Greensboro Coliseum or somewhere that's really well-known, like Madison Square Garden. They're all, to me, forgettable. But anyhow, we've got Alabama, USA. The arena is the Civic Center with commentary by, and this is definitely a highlight as well as actual matches, Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura, who are like two all-time greats on commentary. Ventura obviously kind of retired wrestler and later, Politico. Jim Ross, I love seeing him. This is his early days when he's come out of, he's been with Bill Watts. He's been on Southern Wrestling commentary. And then Crockett came along. Crockett, famous for spending too much money on jets and limousines and big sportatoriums, pretty much a lot of debt, went bankrupt. sold infamously to the Ted Turner networks in the late 80s. And Jim Ross was very fortunate. Of all the people who were going to be out of a job overnight, Jim Ross was like the one guy that they were pretty much almost guaranteed to keep in the Crockett, the Ted Turner like buyout / merger, because he was just really taking off as a commentator. He'd already done great work, and he'd been in a bunch of other Southern promotions doing awesome work on the road. He was on to Divorce Number 2 by this time, because I'm reading his like biography at the moment. So I'm really getting the inside baseball stuff on Jim Ross when I'm watching this and reading his book, because he's brutally honest about how he was just like wrestling to him was like a drug. It's like he's just on the road and he loves commentating, loves being in the business. He was being the salesman for a bit, very good at media promotion. I love seeing Jim Ross. Worst run-on sentence ever for a Johnny Sorensen sentence. I love seeing him in this fucking Hawaiian shirt. It's like, it makes me think of like WrestleMania 9 when he's in the toga. It's just like, okay, you're in this promotion, you're doing this, go. We're putting you in this stupid fucking outfit. Off you go.
I'd say he'd rather wear that Hawaiian shirt than wear a toga any day of the week.
But he runs with it. He's so good.
And this is our like we've talked about a few WrestleManias now, and we've done a couple of the early Starcades, which are still under the NWA branding. But this is our first WCW show that we're actually covering.
A Turner era when he bought out the Crockett. I can't say Crockett without thinking of like Miami Vice as well. Unreliable
every time, and it's an interesting kind of nexus point here of the comings and goings.
It is. That's one of the things I love about this pay-per-view.
Oh yeah, it's just like, because even we have we see Tony Schiavone with Eazy-E, Eric Bischoff, and Bischoff, he's only a couple of years away from
Ken model mode.
Oh, a full-on Ken doll mode, but he's like
Tony Schiavone when he was like fully into the wrestling and still, whether he was doing promo stuff or commentating stuff, it was awesome. I love hearing his voice in this era, and he definitely had the passion. He had the passion and enthusiasm, so he's excellent.
Well, Watts, of course, making an appearance. He's currently in charge. He's the head booker here for WCW.
And he'd worked a lot with JR in the like earlier promotions before we got to this era. He'd worked with like Mid-South and all that, and got along real well with JR, and invited him into kind of behind closed doors meetings very early on as far as what was going on, as far as promoter, booker, and talent and all that.
Kind of gives this it's like a rah-rah speech almost before the event kicks off, where he's like, well, I'm here to make sure that these fans have the best night of their lives, and WCW is about the rules and enforcing the rules, and we're all about rules and the rule of law, and he's all like talking about rules. And in real life, part of the reason Bill Watts was so disliked among the wrestlers was because how strict he actually was. He really was kind of, don't be late for shows, don't be drunk, don't be high, always keep kayfabe. And that really rubbed some people the wrong way who were just used to a more kind of laid back way of doing things. They couldn't stand.
But he ran good promotions in the early 80s and made good matches, and they did that NWA. If you've got the WWF is more the cartoonish style, NWA is a bit more realistic style. He went with the more realistic style, the more athletic style, and to his credit.
Yeah, and Watts, especially in the kind of mid to late 80s, his UWF show was one of the few kind of ratings successes outside of WWF programming.
Oh, that was heartbreaking. I was reading just yesterday in the Jim Ross book, because he's done 2 books. One's his main biography, one's a kind of follow-up one. He talked about that, going from Mid-South to UWF to WCW, and in the ratings and the money, they were doing so well. And when they got to this UWF, but unfortunately, it was kind of just doomed from the beginning, and it was going to die no matter what, through no fault of their own, because you had all these wrestling wars between McMahon up in New York, the Southern guys in the territories, the Crockett promotions, the Bill Watts, the Mid-South, all this stuff was all kind of coalescing and going on. And then we had cable TV came along and pay-per-views and all this, and just changed the whole game. From we had all these territories, these little fiefdoms, these little like warlords doing their own thing, who didn't care a whole lot about business half the time, and some of them were terrible business people. But when cable TV came along, it just changed the whole game, like pretty much overnight. And it was really sad to see that they did so well with Mid-South, building up guys like Junkyard Dog, Ted DiBiase, Jake the Snake, and went into UWF, did this merger to kind of be a competitor to McMahon up in New York, and then it just kind of fell on its ass. But it wasn't their fault, because the Crockett era came along. There was sales and into sales and mergers, and then that came along for a few years, overspending, and then we went into this era, to the WCW Ted Turner era, because that failed as well. So it's a really exciting time. If you go 85 to 1990 and wrestling through the territories, crazy time as far as the territories, the businesses, who was doing what on screen and behind the screen, all the businesses and backdoor deals and that, and just a really exciting time to as far as what was going on in wrestling, especially to look back as a fan.
100%, and especially where we are here in 1992, you kind of have a situation where the WWF is still number one, but they are starting to decline a bit. So it feels like there's this opportunity ready for WCW to pounce. It's a very kind of tension-filled moment in wrestling history. And we mentioned, of course, we've got Tony Schiavone, we've got the Bish, we've got Bill Watts and Jim Ross, but making his return to the Boba Joe show, somebody we have not spoken about probably since WrestleMania 6. It's Jesse Ventura, the Body himself, is returning to our screens here.
Body man.
What an intro with all the bikini babes walking him down to the ring. And he's looking as buff and flamboyant as ever.
It's an absolute treat to hear these guys on commentary together, because if you go back to your 80s stuff as far as commentary, hearing like Gorilla Monsoon, Bobby the Brain, Jesse Ventura, eventually we get to Jim Ross. Later on, we get, of course, on Raw, the old famous combo of Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler. Any of those guys, man, I can just listen to them without the matches. And one of the things Jim Ross talks about in his books is he was a big fan of listening to sports radio, where commentators would have to spruik up baseball, basketball, football, whatever. And you're just listening to it. You're not seeing the visual. So that's part of what makes Jim Ross so great, is that he grew up with that kind of culture and thing. And both Jim Ross and Ventura are fantastic. I could just listen to their audio from any event, like a podcast, without even watching their event. They're so enjoyable to listen to. And when I watch any kind of modern wrestling, I'm not trying to knock it. There's certainly good talented people out there. They're doing some good things as well as some bullshit things. I can't think of anybody today that I actually want to listen to as a commentator. I can't think of a single person, not one, in AEW or WWF or whatever, any other indie promotions. I'm sure there's some good ones out there, but there's no one I actually want to listen to and can go, man, this is like listening to Optimus Prime or He-Man, hearing these voices. They're soothing, they're comforting, they're confident, they're very skilled. There's no one I can think of today, whereas any of these classic dudes from the 80s, early 90s, just fantastic. Can listen to them any old time.
Getting some high-flying action here. The WCW light heavyweight title.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because we've talked briefly before when we were doing our X-Pac chat. Actually, we spoke about the Cruiserweight Championship. But before they had a Cruiserweight Championship, they actually had a Light Heavyweight Championship. So that's interesting for WCW here.
Flying Brian.
Flying Brian, and he's going up
There's
against...
There's no signs of guns or anything like the Stone Cold era and Raw. It's none of that home invasion nonsense. This is a more innocent time.
Yeah, because what we're looking at now, these two guys who are wrestling, and in a few years' time, they're both going to be nearly unrecognizable. So Flying Brian is going to go on to become the loose cannon, and he's going to be all crazy.
Yeah, with all the denim and the hair.
And Scotty Flamingo is going to be Raven, which is a totally different look and
Yeah.
feel for him.
Both
Like
ended
he's
up very denim and very hair and very, I guess, I don't know, Nirvana mixed with Metallica, I guess, as far as hair and style.
whereas here he's like a Miami Vice pimp coming out to
Yeah,
wrestle his match with Flying Brian. This is a really good opening match, and
it is.
it's it's kind of it's almost sad to watch in some ways, knowing what would happen to Brian Pillman in a few
Oh,
years. Like
yeah. I mean, both.
he
Yeah.
he'd be dead 5 years later. Like that's the
Mm.
craziest thing about watching this match. And here he is, like in his prime, great athlete, and just really just going out there and giving it his all. He's
And I
fairly
don't
injury
blame
free.
Flying Brian. Like, it's the culture and business of wrestling that's taken so many victims. And if you've been around it long term and look into what goes on behind the scenes, it's like if you looked at, I don't know, modern Activision and video games. There's a horrible culture of abuse and horrible shit that goes on behind the scenes that leads to deaths. Don't happen in a vacuum, especially the record number of deaths in wrestling when people are on pills or they're on the road and they're driving off the road and having heart attacks, all this sort of shit. Very depressing. I won't harp on about it, but I don't blame him one bit for how things ended up, because it's definitely the culture and business behind it, which, if you did have unions, if you did have standards and practices and other things and better laws and things, there'd be less people dead and there would still be business and money to be made.
Yeah, and especially in the case of Brian, once the injuries started to mount up and you fall into that cycle of depending on painkillers just to actually
Yeah,
get
like painkillers
through the
and
day.
rehab. And
Yeah, it will take its toll. And Scotty Flamingo, who would go on to be Raven, he was no stranger to the hard life as well when it came to drugs and all sorts of stuff. So, but it is nice to see both these guys kind of young and relatively injury free, and still able to go out and go balls to the wall, bell to bell. It's a really nice
yeah,
match in the sense that even though it's light heavyweights, they still keep it fairly grounded and technical. Part of the reason is that Bill Watts has actually kind of instituted rules where he doesn't want people just like going up to the top rope all the time, because he feels that it's overused, and it's weird. He's almost predicting the future of how wrestling is gonna turn out. But so you'll notice in this match, even though they're doing a lot of high flying moves, lots of them are kind of being done from the second or the middle rope as opposed to the top rope, because they're trying to obey the rules that Bill Watts
yeah,
has
it does
set
feel a
in
bit
place.
okay, because like, don't get up on the top rope and don't go outside the ring and don't be rude to your mum or I'll come around and I'll give you a slap.
And from what I understand, like just kind of reading about Watts's mentality, he wasn't doing it to try and just, be a dick or anything. He was doing it because he felt like it was getting to the stage where everybody was doing everything all at once. And it didn't matter whether you're watching the main event or watching the opening match, you were going to see people go outside the ring and fight outside and
So
do
basically, it was
crazy
turning
stuff.
into AEW.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody does
So
every stupid thing, and nothing has any impact because you've seen it all the time. And there's nothing special about any particular match.
Because you'll even notice as well with Watts when he came out at the beginning of the show to give the rah speech, and then he was talking about the importance of rules. He does mention that in certain matches tonight that the wrestlers have come to an agreement where certain rules are going to be waived or not being enforced. So he's trying to give a logical reason as to why some stipulations are still allowed to exist while others are kind of being parked to the side. So,
Yeah,
I will admire Watts for that, in the sense that he was trying to at least make it seem more like a sport and a more realistic kind of situation rather than
yeah,
just
he did
basic
come from like
gimmick
wanting to
match.
have that kind of sporting, it's style and realism and that. And I mean, it's not that different than if you have a match where you get some color and get some blood. But if you did that on every single match for the pay per view, it would be meaningless. But if you had a particular match that highlighted it, then that's that one that kind of stands out, or if they earn it. Whereas if you're doing every gimmick in every match, it becomes meaningless. It's like if you had Christmas every day of the year, it would be pointless.
the two boys here, they really work well together. And Scotty Flamingo, he picks up the ring, or the win, I should say, with his cheating ways.
If he picked up the ring, that'd be something. That'd be quite something.
Yeah, nice little opener here to get us kicked off.
Yeah, I did. Overall, I really enjoyed this pay-per-view event, and it's in an era where wrestling's in a downturn, both the WCW and WWF, where it's not doing too great in sales and pay-per-views and house shows and whatever. But I found this one's kind of a bit of an anomaly where I found it really enjoyable from beginning to end. And post-match, we get the option to vote for Missy or Medusa. The phone number is no longer active, unfortunately. They've blanked that out. So you can't call the number anymore.
Just in case.
99 cents per minute.
We are going to be seeing these three people a lot tonight. So we're going to be seeing Johnny B. Bad, who's the host. And of course, we're going to be seeing the beautiful Missy Hyatt and Medusa. I think they kind of messed things up a little bit in this first contest, because they bring Missy out first, which I don't think they meant to do. I think they actually meant to bring out Medusa first, so she'd get booed. But it doesn't work out as well the way they do it. They'll switch up the order later on and actually get that right. But for the time being,
I definitely prefer Johnny B. Bad to Mark Mero, because like when they brought him into like Raw and all that, it just went nowhere with him. It was just like really boring. And even though the Johnny B. Bad gimmick's like really over the top, and doing that Little Richard thing, it's entertaining. Even though it's cheesy as hell, it's more entertaining than watching Mark Mero any day.
He manages to pull it off. I'll say that much. Like he's able to actually
like
make
as Mark Mero, he's like a generic kickboxer. Because this was the time when they had Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock and that. But as a generic kickboxer dude wearing a do-rag on his head, he was just really boring, and the character went nowhere. So yeah, I will happily enjoy some over-the-top cheese Johnny B. Bad. Well, and some fans got their Sting shirt from the catalog, which we talked about with Bjorn a few months back. We went through a whole big catalog of merchandise, and that was in there. The old pink scorpion.
But yeah, with
I would love to have that shirt.
With Johnny B. Bad, or I suppose with Mark Mero, in real life, he actually had been a former Golden Gloves boxing champion, so he was a legit.
But it's not obvious when you watch him.
No, not yeah. But that's the interesting thing about him. Like, you have this really flamboyant dude, and he's playing a character that's so kind of far removed from what he was in real life. Whereas in the WWF, they're like, "Oh no, you're a boxer. That sounds great, pal. We're just gonna make you a boxer," and the usual kind of Vince-induced ideas. Plus, he was riddled with injuries
or a plumber.
WWF called. So we're seeing the Great American Bash logo here as well.
Yeah, a little promo, little ad during the event for the upcoming event.
Exciting stuff.
Which I think, I'm not sure. I think I have the first one of that recorded, because I was trying to get a bunch of dodgy stuff from over the last month. I was looking up what other 80s iconic pay-per-views are there. You had the AWA Super Clash 3, which famously went real bad and nobody got paid, and Jerry Lawler didn't get paid and didn't want to come back next time, but was an actual enjoyable thing to watch. And then you had Great American Bash. We had Clash of the Champions, Starcade, and of course some of these other stuff like Bash at the Beach and Halloween Havoc. But I was trying to look up what other than WrestleManias, of course, what other iconic pay-per-views we had to talk about next year, sort of thing.
Ron Simmons versus Terrence Taylor, the tailor-made man. Terrence Taylor.
I like a bit of Ron Simmons. I still want a Ron Simmons figure that's not. I don't want a Farouk action figure. I don't really want the Disciples. Give me a classic Ron Simmons figure.
And if you want a Terrence Taylor figure, you definitely don't want a Red Rooster figure. You just want a good old tailor-made man, Terrence Taylor. Yeah, this is a nice little match, really just designed to get Ron Simmons over. Ron Simmons is going to enjoy a sustained push under Bill Watts, because Bill Watts is going to try and make him his new version of the Junkyard Dog. He wants Simmons to be a popular black athlete, and he wants to draw upon that popularity.
Do you know what's ironic is that some people are fucking morons, and reporters had accused Bill Watts of being a racist. I'm like, are you joking? The guy that pushed JYD and pushed Ron Simmons and pushed a number of other athletes and other people was like, you accusing him of being a racist? Like, that shows to me what an out of touch reporter would say such nonsense. Because I was watching the Legends of Wrestling documentary series where it's like a round table with, like, often it's got JR or Bill Watts, or some had Lawler or Ric Flair in there. Michael Hayes was at most of the episodes. It goes for several seasons, and I was watching them all over the last month, and then they pulled them things off the network because of the sale. So I was really annoyed because I was well into watching all those and enjoying all those stories.
Yeah, the Bill Watts being a racist thing, from what I understand, it stems from a comment he made to a reporter years prior. Now, I will not repeat what the sentence is. If anybody wants to look it up, they can look it up. But he said this thing to a reporter in this like throwaway kind of magazine interview. And then what ended up happening is years later, somebody read the interview, saw what he said, and they faxed a copy of the interview transcript to one of Turner's top executives, who happened to be black, and he read this particular sentence that Bill Watts had said, and apparently, as the story goes, that was the end of Bill Watts. Once this guy had kind of found out about that interview, it was really the beginning of the end. Because look, Watts, look, I suppose both things can be true. He's an old school kind of shit kicking cowboy, so he may not be, the classical out and out racist, but he may say inappropriate things because he's just one of those shit kicker type of dudes. So at the same time, like you said, he did push black wrestlers. He was a big junkyard dog guy, and now he's going to try the same with Ron Simmons. So you definitely couldn't accuse him of racism in the sense that he was trying to hold back, black athletes, or not push ethnic performers, like, because he was not afraid to actually use non-white performers,
and it's something he went out of his way to do when he didn't have to. Like, it was part of his career was like helping to push some of these athletes that he was some of the guys he was friends with outside of the wrestling, and wanted to actually do something more and not just be another stupid promoter.
But he on this night though, he picked a good guy to go up against Simmons. Like Terry Taylor, for all his woes as the Red Rooster, he is actually a good wrestler in between the ropes, and he's a smaller guy who can bump around for you, and he really makes Ron Simmons look good here, and makes him look like a credible threat. Simmons is he's going to go on the big push pretty soon. He had up until now been teaming with Butch Reed in the tag team known as Doom.
Just gonna duck out for 1 minute.
Off now. Yeah, no problem. They've been split off now, and his single push is beginning. And it's kind of crazy because I actually had been watching some WCW around this time as a youngster. We used to get the I think it was called WCW Worldwide. They used to show it on ITV. And I had an idea who Ron Simmons was from watching that show, but somewhere later in the year, I stopped watching, or I didn't get a chance to watch. So I didn't realize at the time that Ron Simmons would actually go on to become WCW World Champion. That's not something I'd realized till years later. And it's kind of crazy that the guy who came into the WWF as Farouk Assad and wearing the stupid blue gladiator gear and kind of doing a million and one things, I just, it's crazy to think that he's like a former WCW world champion, because for the longest time I'd always just regarded him as, being, oh, it's Farouk, he's the gladiator dude, or he's the Nation of Domination guy, and then later on one half of the Acolytes or the APA tag team. So to see him in this kind of guise as a singles competitor and someone who's in line for a big singles push, and who would at one point eventually become the world champion of the whole promotion, it is quite the sight to behold, especially for us WWF/WWE fans who really do just remember him as Farouk. And he gets one of those pushes as champion where, even though he is the world champion, he's not always in the main event, and that's probably a couple of things. I think Watts probably realized that Simmons was still somewhat inexperienced as a singles guy, and probably wasn't overly confident in putting him on top in the main event and the last match of the show. So for a decent chunk of Simmons's run as champion, from what I remember, he would be wrestling on the big shows, but not always in the last match. Sometimes the last match would go to bigger stars, or at least people who were viewed as being bigger stars. So yeah, he kind of got the Chris Benoit or the Kofi Kingston style world title push, where it's like you're the champion, but you're not the main focus of the show.
Yeah, it's an odd thing, really, to be like kind of champion and name only, but not getting like the media push and all that other stuff.
But on this night, he looks $1 million as he barrels through Terrence Taylor on his way to victory.
Yeah, I can happily enjoy a '90s Ron Simmons match any old day. Like, is just, I don't know, he's just excellent wrestler and all rounder and that, and thankfully went on to do more cool stuff in WWF when he had his run with Bradshaw and all that. It was good fun.
Yeah, here's one of those. This is like a match where someone just hit a randomizer button. And,
yeah, we get an all-time classic dude versus like a Kento with implants, who has one of the best episodes of Dark Side of the Ring. That's like so over the top and crazy, you wouldn't believe half the stuff that happens in it until you actually watch it, about like bloody gunshots with his father and arguments with his mother and implants and male stripper stuff and other crazy things behind the scene.
Yeah, good old Marcus Bagwell. Some of us will know him, of course, as Buff Bagwell.
Yeah,
and
Buff.
yes, as Johnny mentioned, quite the crazy real life he
Quite
had.
the character.
The first ever.
You can't feel. You have to feel sympathetic for him, because half the things that happen in those Dark Side episode are just so pathetic and horrible. You can't not feel bad for him.
Yeah, Buff. He was just, he's an odd duck, to say the least, and he's one of those guys in wrestling who he was constantly given chances. Like, even we see here, he's kind of still in his rookie phase, or his rookie phase, where he's just kind of getting some exposure. But he was on the WCW payroll and featured prominently for forever, right up until the very end of the promotion. They were still featuring Bagwell, and he's the guy who's largely blamed as the reason why, when the WWF bought WCW, that they didn't launch WCW as its own show, because Bagwell's match with Booker T that they had on Raw was so poorly received, and it was such a stinker of a match, that Vince decided there and then that they weren't going to give WCW their own show. They're just going to pull the plug on that idea completely. But it's a different story back here. In 1992, he's a fresh-faced rookie, and he's been given a little spotlight to shine against one of the all-time greats, Greg Valentine, who, it feels like, whether you're watching in the early 80s, late 80s, early 90s, even right up until the mid 90s, we're going to still see Greg Valentine popping up on various American wrestling
They can
shows
still
for
go.
major
They can still
promotions.
wrestle. They can still probably
He can
beat
still
the hell
go.
out of people half his age.
Yeah, and I can really appreciate, especially as someone who's moving on in years himself. Man, Greg Valentine looks goddamn great for his age. I
Yeah.
wish I was like built like that. He's like a tank, but he can still move around.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Yeah, just a great physique on a. And I
Just
love
come out like a
Valentine.
fan film where it's like the Terminator, but it's Greg Valentine just like smashing things.
Yeah, and I just love watching Greg like hit guys with forearms and elbows and his knee strikes. He's just like a real gruff, tough dude, and
Yeah.
big fan of Valentine here, I have to say. See some fans flexing their guns in the audience.
Yeah, they
And,
do. They do
nice.
good audience shots throughout this pay per view that aren't annoying. They're just like genuinely audience shots. Whereas some of the modern stuff I watch, I saw a clip from an AEW match the other day. It was from sometime this year. I don't know when. And there was like no signs of the audience. Then just this one random guy holding up a sign, and it said, "Zelda Breath of the Wild is not a real Zelda game." And I was like, it's got nothing to do with wrestling. And that game came out 10 years ago. And if you want to be relevant, you could have at least mentioned the most 2 games that came after that. So it's like 10 years ago. I was like, what the fuck?
Sounds like your typical AEW fan. I'm only joking, AEW fans. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay to like different wrestling. But I
I
was
do
actually
like the
watching.
way they shoot the audience in AEW, though, is quite nice. And they do overhead shots and they pan around. And I do like the way they show the audience. I just thought, what the hell was that sign?
Yeah, I like the way they show the audience when there's an audience to be shown. Sometimes one side of
There's
the
an
arena.
audience. Oh, that's a deep
Some,
take.
sometimes one side of the arena is totally empty, and you're kind of wondering
Yeah.
why are they only using these same 2 camera angles? And then you realize, oh, they don't want you to see what's behind the other camera because it's just avoid the
Yeah.
darkness.
I don't. Certainly not my favorite match in the event, but I love seeing Valentine anytime. And Bagwell, you can't. I don't know. Love him, leave him, laugh him, whatever you're gonna do. So the next one, we've got Full Count Anywhere match. Cactus Jack on the attack versus the Stinger, the Sting, who's
This is a
in
real
peak
treat.
stinginess. He's got. I love when seeing him in a fluoro pink or yellow and all that, and with the hair, and he's just awesome in this era. He's so good. And it's funny seeing him with Cactus Jack, who's usually like on the kind of B matches, but here he's with he's with the headliner guy sort of guy,
This is without a doubt at the time Cactus Jack's biggest match, and I think he even wrote about it in his first book how important this match was for him. Just really, being able to shine against like a true main eventer and a true top star in the
And you've
company.
got one guy who's super in shape, and by his own admission, Mrs. Foley's little boy, even at his best physical shape, was always a bit of a schlub and a bit of a roly-poly sort of man. No matter how much time he put in the gym or what he did, his body just did not respond well to any kind of training. So the contrast of the look and shape and conditioning of these guys.
Yeah, and and the crazy thing is, Cactus actually kind of looking back now, Cactus looks to be in probably the best shape of his life here, just
Yeah,
in
pretty
terms
much.
of his size. But yeah, what an absolute treat it is to get to see these 2 guys go at it in 1992. Like Sting, he's so over, like he's just beloved,
Yeah.
and Cactus is just the perfect guy for him to go against because with Cactus, he will risk life and limb to make his opponent look good, and he makes Sting look really, really good in this match. He takes so much punishment in this match. He's like getting thrown into guardrails. He's getting like slammed onto concrete. He is just getting mauled by Sting at points in
Yeah,
this
like
match.
it's not a hardcore. I mean, it's a Falls anyway, not a hardcore match, but it's got that sort of feel to it, like up and over the bloody rail and the concrete and here and back and forth, and it doesn't feel too gimmicky. It suits the style of the era without being annoying. Because some of the like 90s 2000 era hardcore matches were just like like bad cover versions of an 80s song that you actually liked. Like this feels like the more like the genuine thing.
And Sting, he takes some risks himself. He does a big diving clothesline at the beginning of the match, like from the top rope onto the ramp. And this is probably a good time to mention, I actually love the raised WCW ramp that's at like the same height as the ring. I think that's a great way and a great look for a company to have like an entranceway underway to the ring with the ramp at the same height. I've always been a fan of that look of WCW around this time. But yeah, what an absolute treat. Total contrast of styles, but at the same time, they just come together to have this almost perfect chemistry. And because on paper, if you saw the name Sting and Cactus Jack, you might think, oh, well, that sounds like a bit of a weird mismatch. But when you actually see it on screen, it's like, wow, this is really, really good. And a really good showing for both guys.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I didn't until I watched it. I didn't know I was going to see this match. I was just like, oh man, it's like two guys I genuinely love as wrestlers and guys in and out of the ring and decent human beings and that, and really fun match. So next up, we get a non-title 30-minute Iron Man Challenge match, which is on the artwork for the poster, by the way, in the background and the paraphernalia and the advertising of the era. Rick Rude versus Ricky Steamboat, or double the Rick for your dollar.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, we the last WrestleMania reviewed was WrestleMania 11, so we haven't yet gotten to WrestleMania 12, and that Iron Man.
I have got them stashed away on the computer, so ready to go early next year. We'll be getting into them.
We are getting a taste of what an Iron Man match can be. And spoiler, folks, I'm just going to say it now. Confession. I prefer this 30-minute Iron Man match between Rick Rude and Ricky Steamboat. I prefer this match to the hour-long Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. I'm just putting it out there right now. This is a better match. The match we're talking about now, in my opinion, it's a better match. It's got a faster pace. I think the half-hour time limit really adds to the drama, especially when we're getting close to the end of the match and where the crowd are really at fever pitch as to who's going to get that deciding fall. But yeah, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, Johnny, like we've got two guys here who are they're not super heavyweights, but they're definitely big guys who are in shape, shredded.
Got the body.
Two super athletes. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. And
I was surprised in the Hart Michaels one that it went for so long. Why didn't they do a 30-minute one? Why did they make it so long? Because like, as far as an Iron Man match, I'm like, I know Bret Hart can do it, but like, short of that era, like booze and pills and shit, I'm like, is he going to turn up? Is he going to fall asleep halfway in the match? Will he be asleep in a chair in the hotel lobby? Like, why even risk that? Why even risk trying to get him to go 60 minutes? And does he have the conditioning? He was certainly in shape, but does he have the conditioning to even do it? Because I got to assume in any Iron Man match with Hart and Michaels that Hart has to be carrying him in the second half. I'm sure he's going to gas out or be not good for all the booze and pills and shit he's doing, whereas Bret Hart wasn't a pill or boozer guy, so he's going to have the superior conditioning. But anyhow, that aside, this match is like such good fun. Like Rick Rude, Ricky Steamboat, two guys I can happily watch any of their classic like 80s, early 90s matches. All time greats to be, like very entertaining and fun as hell to watch.
And I think one thing, and well, we will talk about the WrestleMania 12 Iron Man someday.
Yeah,
when
for
we
sure.
do get the main 12. So I won't focus too much on that. But one major advantage or one major win I think that this match has over that one is, in this match there's actually loads of falls before the actual final finish of the match. So it goes back and forth. Steamboat gets one, Rick gets one. It just goes back and forth. Whereas I think with the WrestleMania one, the problem I have with it is it goes 0-0 for like almost a full hour.
Yeah, that was annoying. I was watching it about a week ago. I was watching that match again.
Whereas I think just for me, and and like it's not like I'm like the ultimate sports guy and I watch sports all the time. But when I do watch sports, I like watching a sport where there's like a score going up and like there's like just a bit more of a back and forth. And
But who wants to watch a basketball game where they get zero the entire thing? It's like it's just
exactly,
annoying.
exactly.
It's like, just score some fucking
Like
points.
like part of the reason why I'm not a big football fan, like I'm not a big soccer fan, is because I hate like watching these 90-minute games where nobody scores. Like just like blah.
You
This
would
is
probably
boring.
like AFL. I don't watch it, but like it's like the fastest moving version of football, of like American gridiron, New Zealand rugby, and then Australian football league. AFL was like a super fast paced game where there's just score, score, score constantly. It's always like exciting and moving and on the go.
I think another thing that makes this match so good, apart from because we like there's no point in us kind of going through the half hour and talking about it move for move. We already
Well,
know
at
that
move
these two
at
guys are.
moment 27, he does that little thing like this, and then he goes like that.
But like it goes without saying, these two men are excellent wrestlers. But I think what really helps this match is the fact that we've got Rick Rude, who is like a total scumbag heel, versus Ricky Steamboat, who's like a total hero babyface, and
That's for
just the
you, man.
two.
He's the hero of the ages. Remember when he came out that time with his kid and he had the full Rio outfit the rest of the way? I love that.
Exactly.
It's a good
He's
guy.
such he's such a good guy. So you've got like the ultimate good guy going up
And
against
when
one
you
of
see
the
him in the
ultimate bad
documentaries, he's a
guys.
good guy. Like, yeah.
And he never turned heel, Ricky Steamboat. He was always that perennial baby face. And yeah, of course you've got Rick Rude, who just is the perfect heel in many ways. He's got the look, he's got the charisma, he's got the wrestling skills, and the two of them just have like what I would call a near perfect chemistry. Like I think the
Yeah.
only other person that Steamboat has better chemistry in the ring with would be Ric Flair. So
Yeah, I love those
it's
flea matches.
an amazing match, and I just like to state as well how good a show is this that we're reviewing, Beach Blast. That like I haven't complained about any match yet. We've just been given
Yeah.
good match after good match.
Yeah, that's what kind of
We
stuck out to me. I thought let's do this one because the matches are pretty consistent. The fans aren't annoying. They've got signs that are actually kind of fun rather than irritating.
and there's been I'm sure look of long-term listeners and viewers to the show, they've heard us review these undercards on previous WrestleManias or Starcades where we can barely remember
Some of them are
what
too
happened in the
stuffed.
match.
They're too bloated with matches and bloody squash matches and all that. Whereas this feels like the prototypical pay per view where you've got an even amount of matches. They're not too long, not too short. There's a lack of squash matches, and you've got a reasonable, stars, main event, yada yada. Like it feels like a really good overall pay per view.
We got another little treat now. Some super workers here are thrown into the mix for the
Yeah,
six-man tag. Like what a range of teams here. So we got Barry Windham, young Dustin Rhodes, and Nikita Koloff
young Goldust.
versus Arn Anderson, beautiful Bobby, and Steve Austin, and with Paul Heyman as the manager on the outside. What a star-studded, workhorse-laden teams we have here. And of course, good old grumpy Ole Anderson as
Yeah,
the
as a
referee
referee,
here.
I wouldn't be mucking around if he was a referee, man. Look at that guy. He's going to mess you up. He's not
Of
going to
course,
tolerate any shenanigans.
we get to see a little bit here more just before the match starts of the Medusa and
Jim
Missy
Ross
Hyatt.
is very excited about these bikini events. Look at him there. He's just going, yeah, he's very excited.
I have to say, man, Missy Hyatt was like a 5-star stunner back here. She's a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
And that's not throwing shade on Medusa. Medusa's a beautiful woman too, but Missy Hyatt, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
It's a very close competition, which will be coming up very soon.
But yeah, the Dangerous Alliance, what a great stable of heels here. And you've got the two super workers in Arn Anderson and beautiful Bobby Eaton. And then you've got your future prospect in Steve Austin, coming down the pipeline as well. And this is the happy era of stunning Steve Austin before Hogan and his friends come into the
Yeah.
company and bury him. So he's
Yeah,
in the
that's
middle
true.
of he's having a good time here. And it's just great seeing these 6 guys being able to go out and do their thing. Obviously, like, we've got at this stage, like, Barry Windham and Nikita Koloff, Anderson and Bobby. They're veterans, but on each team we also have a young prospect. So on the babyface team, your young prospect is Dustin Rhodes, and on the heel team, your young prospect is Steve Austin. And they would both go on to have quite the careers. Obviously,
Yeah.
Dustin Rhodes, he's going to be Goldust and all that good stuff, and Steve Austin's going to become the biggest wrestling star of his time when he
Texas
becomes
Rattlesnake.
Steve Austin. So it's great seeing them here in their younger years. And of course, we've got the very slim Paul E. Dangerously. It's a young Paul
Yeah.
Heyman here. Fantastic manager at ringside.
He still looks like he's Phil Collins out of the 80s at this time with his phone, like that Phil Collins of Miami Vice with the grey and the hair.
I think like one of the things I love about this show is it feels like we're seeing an almost like a greatest hits of personalities all under one show. Like we've got Jesse Ventura, Jim Ross, Paul Heyman, all under one show. Like it's crazy to have all these guys sharing the screen at the same time. It's amazing, and it's a real, like I mentioned earlier, it's this kind of nexus point in the wrestling timeline when you've got people coming and going from the different companies, and a lot of them just happen to be here at Beach Blast 92 just to treat us. And this match, like this 6-man match, it's probably one of the shortest matches on the show. Like it's quite short in comparison to the other matches, but while they're on screen, they just give it their all and give us a great little match to keep us happy as the show trucks along.
Yeah, there's good variety in singles matches here and there. A super tag team match, and like sometimes tag team matches are kind of bloated, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. So happy about that. Then we get into some Medusa versus, also known as Alundra Blaze, versus Missy Hyatt, and Missy Hyatt was sometimes doing the kind of like manager stuff in the 80s and the 90s. Sometimes you'd see her. She became almost like the co-host, like Saturday Night WCW with JR, and it would cut to the audience, and when Jim Ross would come in and be like, "No, we're going to the audience with Missy Hyatt," and you would see her talking to members of the audience. You would get weird guests on each week, like, I don't know, Corey Feldman or some other random people that don't really give a crap about. They would have some random guests on each week sitting on the little like fold out director's chair next to Jim Ross on the old Saturday Night WCW.
You do a great bit here where Medusa comes out and she shows her stuff, and then we think that Missy's not going to be able to come out because someone has stolen her bikini and she doesn't know what to do. So she calls Jesse over and she grabs his bandana and scarf off his head, and she pulls the curtains over, and then we see a bit of shimmying and some shaking. And next thing, she comes out in a bikini that's supposedly made out of Jesse's bandana and scarf. So not only is she a beautiful woman, she's also a very talented seamstress because she's able to, like, sew an outfit together in about 30 seconds. So that's pretty funny. No, I think as you're mentioning about Missy, and she did play quite a prominent role. From what I understand, her downfall came about basically because in real life for a little while she was dating Jason Harvey, as in Jason Harvey of the Wonder Years fame, who's a good friend of Eric Bischoff.
Yeah.
And I think they split up around the same time as Eric Bischoff was coming into power in WCW. So Bischoff was more or less like, well, fuck you, Missy. You were going out with my friend, but now you're his ex, so I'm just going to treat you like shit. And that was pretty much the end of her. Like, she got kind of bullied out of the company, and
that's a shame.
that was the end of poor Missy. But look, back here in 92, her and Medusa, they're getting me all hot under the collar with this bikini action. I don't know if my innocent mind can handle all this flesh on display here.
And it's kind of different for this time too, because way before the Attitude Era, when things went all Jerry Springer and crazy and over the top, this is just, I mean, it's titillating and silly, but it's just kind of innocent fun, even though you could, it's still kind of exploitative, but it just kind of isn't silly fun, and it feels like watching Benny Hill or something. There's nothing really offensive about it.
And it's a great bit just for Jesse and Johnny B. Bad to kind of work their shtick and do a nice little bit of comedic stuff. Just to that's another thing. It really helps with the flow of the show in the sense that it helps kind of bring the audience down a bit after each match, so they're ready for the next match. They've watched a little bit of comedy in between, and now they're ready to get back into the serious action.
Apparently, in the same era, Medusa also did like a Playboy shoot that was never released. There's a little factoid for you. I was looking up when I was looking up behind the scenes stuff of this era. But anyway, remember to vote for Missy or Medusa. Numbers been redacted. Make up their own number. Still costs 99 cents per minute, unfortunately. But I would probably vote for this over listening to The Undertaker or Shawn falling asleep over on the WWF on their hotline they had at the time, where you could hear The Undertaker saying weird pre-recorded stories or Shawn talking to people while the match was happening.
99 cents per minute for a phone call that no doubt lasts.
Yeah, they were big on these phone things. Like WWF was doing them, WCW, Nintendo, Sega were all doing these like phone hotline things. It was a big scam / legitimate business of the era that was quite popular, made a lot of money for companies. Almost, T-shirts and stuff. If you bought a T-shirt, you might still have it now, but if you paid for these 99-cent minute things, you've got nothing. You've got nothing to show for it.
No. But yeah, all you've got to show is if you voted for Missy, then your woman won. That's all you got to show for it. But the problem is you're going to win anyway because it's predetermined.
Yeah, and you do get in the background. We've got Steiners and Musso Rule behind the old JR there. I love seeing some of these random signs and stuff in the matches. So next time we've got WCW World Tag Team Title match. The Steiner brothers, all-time legends, versus Steve Williams and Terry Gordy of the old Freebirds.
Once again, what a treat. And another reason why this show is actually a great piece of wrestling history, because even the order of the show is kind of unique. We've already seen the world champion in action. That was earlier on. But tonight, the spotlight is going to go to the tag teams, which is a great way.
Which is unusual.
It's very unusual, but a great way to kind of send the crowd home on a high note, because this match is one of the. I don't mean to swear too much, but this is one of the best fucking tag team matches you're ever going to see. The Steiners at their peak are just a couple of bulls, and they're going up against.
This is like my mate in New Zealand, Chris. Like this is all-time favorite wrestlers tag teams is the old Steiner brothers, and they're still wearing their old like university jackets or Letterman jackets or whatever you call the bloody things. And they've still got that look to them, and they're just very raw and you can see what the way they move and transition, even if you didn't already know that they were being real college level pro wrestler. College sports wrestlers before we get to pro wrestling, which is the fake wrestling, whereas sports wrestling is the real wrestling, which until McMahon came along and mixed up all those terms. But they've got real skills. Like Steiner Brothers' era could have been in UFC or anything like that. They had like real legitimate skills and could kick your ass.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure literally everybody in this match at this moment in time would kick the living shit out of me.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just because Steve Williams and Terry Gordy are very, very tough men themselves, and at this time they are being heavily featured in Japan as a top tag team over there. And for a lot of people in 1992, this was actually considered more or less a dream match between the top American tag team and the top tag team that was wrestling in Japan. Even though everybody's American, there was that Japanese association.
There's really your difference too between your NWA, the Southern Wrestling Japanese, and then your New York, more cartoonish, more showman style. The emphasis is definitely on, well, these are guys that can really go and mess you up.
And WWF at the time, like, they might end a house show with a tag team main event. They would never end a pay-per-view with a tag team main event. Not for they might do it with something like a big deal if it's like the mega powers and a couple of big stars, but they would never do it for like say like the Heart Foundation or something like that. You would never see like a, for all intensive purposes, their mid-card tag team champions be put over on the final match of a pay-per-view. So like I said earlier, like part of the reason why this show Beach Blast is so memorable is because of the uniqueness of the card and how the matches are actually positioned and how they're laid out. But this match itself, it's a fantastic way to send the crowds home happy. And these days you hear a lot of talk about strong style wrestling. This is strong style wrestling right here. Anytime a Steiner hits you at like a suplex, or Steve Williams hits you with a clothesline,
you're gonna feel it.
It's like you're gonna feel it, and even as the viewer, you can like almost feel the impact coming off the screen when you hear that just kind of two bodies.
You're not gonna feel these kind of suplexes again until like Kurt Angle or Brock Lesnar comes along. Well, that's how long you're gonna be before you can feel these suplexes again.
And Scott Steiner, like a young Scott Steiner, is like a dynamo. He's like a super
athlete. He is.
And of course, we will see how he will evolve later on. He'll adopt the kind of superstar Billy Graham look when he becomes Big Papa Pump, and he is
Big Papa Pump
muscles on top of
the
muscles.
Superman tattoo with that crazy arm that grosses me out. The way it peaks up, it just feels disgusting.
So veiny and vascular, his Big Papa
and
Pump.
Releasing that home exercise video thing, the Big Papa Pump thing that Bill showed one time on the late night. So I think I'd prefer to watch the Stephanie McMahon home exercise video over the Big Papa Pump one.
And once again, though, we're at a real moment in time here where after this event, like Steve Williams and Terry Gordy, they hung around for a little while, but then after that they kind of departed from WCW. So if you just happen to be a fan at the time and were lucky enough to be catching this, you really were catching this kind of dream tag team scenario.
I think like 93, 94, they're on Raw, and then at some point after that, they're back on WCW again.
That's right, yeah. The Steiners, they had a somewhat brief run with the WWF, and they did end up
brief. The brief was Ric Flair's one, really.
Yeah.
They're like, what's Flair doing? We'll go hang out with them, have a few drinks, come back here next time. It's like, what?
Well, I am glad that you brought up Flair, because maybe if there's people watching or listening now who may only be kind of casual fans and they associate the name WCW and they associate that with Ric Flair, and they're probably thinking, well, where is Ric Flair? So at the moment, Ric Flair, at this point in time, he's in the WWF. He's enjoying his stint as the WWF
he did
World
have
Champion.
arguments when Crockett, and when it changed over from Crockett to Ted Turner, there was business behind the scenes with as far as the bookers and what was going on, and Dusty and infighting and arguments where he's like, you're hired and you're fired, and all sorts of nonsense that went on. And as far as they were both kind of trying to push themselves, and he did end up leaving, having problems with the management, and went to WWF for a few years, came back again. Still had a lot of problems with management when we had Eazy-E and other people who really kind of fucked him over when he came back.
But yeah, we will see Ric Flair back in the WCW ring, but not tonight. Tonight the spotlight belongs to the Steiners and Steve Williams and Terry Gordy. For me, like looking at this show as a whole, like it's worth the money alone and worth the time for Sting versus Cactus Jack, for Rick Rude versus Ricky Steamboat in the Iron Man, and then this tag team main event. Those three matches make this like they make it like an A show. They really just put it over the edge as being like a top quality.
And on paper, if you look at the kind of scenario of like, your different pay-per-views, your WrestleManias, your Stuckers, like Beach Blast, it's like, what the hell is Beach Blast? It doesn't sound terribly appealing, but I do like the stupid gimmick. They're wearing like Eazy-E and JR, they're wearing the Hawaiian shirts. They've got this really tacky set which you contrast that with wrestling now. They've got these big, massive arenas and stage shows and lights and so many lasers. You're blind before the first match even starts. You can't see what the hell's going on. There's graphics everywhere. There's advertising. I like these simple sets. It feels like something out of like a 50 science fiction movie. It's really basic and simple. That's all you fucking need for them to walk out. I don't need to be blinded by 50 million lasers and crazy arena light shows. It doesn't need to feel like Kiss or Pink Floyd every time a fucking opening match comes out. It's just too over the top. I don't like that shit. I like the simplicity of, we've come from old days where arenas where you just walked out. There wasn't any of this shit. But now we've got real basic theme, but it doesn't bombard you and overwhelm your senses. It's like the focus is on the wrestling, not on your theme music and your costume that you're going to dump the second you get to the arena and all the ridiculous props and sets. It shouldn't feel like a Hollywood movie. It should feel like some kind of form of wrestling.
Yeah, I agree. But like I am delighted that, you know, for our first like official WCW show, you actually picked a real gem here to like.
Yeah, I was watching it a month ago and just enjoying it so much, and I went, we've got to do this one. It was so fun.
Because, you know, WCW, they're going to have their ups and downs as the years go on, and
yeah,
I'm sure some of the shows we'll review in the future won't always be like such a home run as this. Like we really did get lucky in the sense that from match one right till the end, we got like a top-notch show here.
Yeah, I can happily watch the majority of 90s WCW pay-per-views for better or worse, but, you know, it is really up and down all over the place as far as how it goes from the bloody Crockett into Turner into the, well, we'll say the Bischoff Nitro era and all that. They're all kind of distinct periods as far as what was going on behind the scenes and what was on the TV in front of you week to week.
Yeah, I will look. I can't speak too much about wrestling. I watch tons of bad wrestling all the time. So, once you've set the bar so low, it's only so low you can go. But you know, thankfully on this night though, we got the opposite of bad wrestling. We pretty much had it good across the board. No match was less than good on this show, and we had several very good matches.
And nothing to me felt overly gimmicky. I mean, outside of the normal wrestling gimmicks like 30-minute match. That'd be quite different. 30 minutes, that's more of a rumble. 30-minute match or Falls Anywhere, like the kind of standard stuff, you know, like 70s, 80s, like, you know, variations of matches, tag team, singles. Nothing feels overly gimmicky. Like, I don't feel like we're grabbing clubs out or 10 million ladders out from under the ring or too many run-ins or false finishes. It just felt like good, even matches, good entertainment, good stars. Crowd was into it. And I really enjoyed it. But that's about the end of our Beach Blast look back. We have got some other wrestling stuff coming up. We're going to be doing the Wrestling Classic coming up probably in January-ish. And that one was like WWF's like pay-per-view after WrestleMania 1. It was kind of like a B show, quite entertaining, probably similarly level of entertainment as far as Beach Blast, and I really enjoyed rewatching it this month. And it's one that falls in the cracks, labeled WrestleVision. The Wrestling Classic was meant to be a series of pay-per-views. Like, I was reading through the credits of it the other day, and it was meant to be an ongoing series, but it didn't do too well, and that it's a one-off, and anomaly. They didn't do any sequels to that one.
Yeah, it was almost like their dry run attempt on pay-per-view, because the first WrestleMania was more of like a closed circuit.
Yeah, the closed circuit.
Whereas, you know, the Wrestling Classic was like a proper stab at pay-per-view. So, but like you said,
it precedes other things they came up with later on, and you get like we get a tournament, and then we get like we get a tournament, and then we get a singles match at the end.
Yeah, well, look, there are a few shows in the pipeline here. I'm definitely looking forward to getting into.
Yeah, we got Transformers next week.
Yeah, 84, 85, possibly.
And that's a genuine Optimus Prime, not a bootleg one like the one I opened today. Because look, he's got that stamp on his hand. He's been let into the Transformers club. He must be genuine.
Yeah, the bouncer bot gives you that when you're walking in the door.
Yeah, it
just in
does.
case you leave later
And
on.
then following week we got Die Hard 2 because we did Die Hard 1 last year, Christmas movie. I was just asked in the hot seat on Campbell's GI live stream, is what's your favourite Christmas movie? And I don't really like Christmas movies, so I went Die Hard. Luckily they like Die Hard, so I got away with it.
Hey, it counts. It counts. And Die Hard 2 is going to count as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, we got Toxic
lots
Crusaders
of good
talk
shows.
and wrestling. And plenty more wrestling coming next year. I got a whole bunch of other ones I've sort of squirreled away to turn into shows and kind of pace them out and mix them up with other stuff.
And I'm going to be binging the network for the final month of its existence.
Yeah, they've already started ripping stuff off here in Australia. It's already disappearing. It's not meant to go till the end of the month. It's only 8th of December. I was watching Legends of Wrestling, that roundtable interview series that had like had like Michael Hayes and Jim Ross and all that. Foley's in a few, Dusty's in quite a few. An awesome series. I only released a handful of them on DVD. And it's like a roundtable panel discussion with highlights of matches and careers where they talk about different themes and their favorite wrestlers, and such an amazing show. And I was watching it this week, first time, bang, that's gone. I was watching some Survivor Series, King of the Ring from the first episode, bang, that's gone. Not meant to go to January, but it's all being pulled off right now. By tomorrow, it's just going to, who knows what other shit's disappeared.
Yeah, no, these are the content owners who just take from us and take our money while
they take your money. They don't care what you watch.
Yeah. Well, fuck them. We'll find a way to watch this stuff one way or the other. Yeah, we'll give them the old Richard Pryor and moving #1 gesture.
Give him a King Kong Bundy bear hug from me.
Our network will never take the shows away, folks. Don't you worry about that.
No,
they're here forever.
We'll just get like blocked for some sort of copyright nonsense. But I avoid using stuff most of the time as well. We've got still images, not videos, so I get copyright blocked every stupid possible thing you could ever talk about on YouTube, because they're all partnered up with various intercompu global mega hypernets that own everything on Earth and don't want you to talk about anything or have an opinion or put on your They Live sunglasses. Don't do any of those things.
Just keep watching our show. It's all that matters.
Yeah. Okay, if you get a moment, chuck us a like, chuck us a comment. Let us know if there's a match you enjoyed, match you hated, something else you want to see us cover in a future episode. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Take care, folks.